50 years ago in the cattle feeding industry, it was practically non-existent except up in the Corn Belt. We've progressed now to where we have yards, that some of them 100 to 150,000 cattle on feed at a time. In between that time, we watched the industry slowly evolve, and John Matsushima, with his nutrition background and probably more than anything else, his personality and the way he related to the cattle feeder made a tremendous difference in what we were doing.
When I was young, I guess I was rather curious. My father always used to get up early. He would make his round around the shed where I used to have my calves. One morning, I happened to get up early, and I was wondering why he was feeding so much alfalfa hay.
John Matsushima's curiosity begins his lifelong research into animal nutrition.
And they're all willing to learn.
He was a 4-H kid who grew up to be a renowned professor of animal sciences, a pioneer nutritionist, and a leading innovator in the cattle industry worldwide. But he grew up in a different time, in Lafayette, Colorado.
I was born on December 24th, just the day before Christmas, in year 1920. At that period of time, things were very, very primitive. I remember my mother telling me one time, she said, when you were brought home from the hospital, we didn't have you to put you anywhere except in an apple box with a little blanket.
With his parents and 4 brothers, the Matsushima family eventually settled on an 80-acre farm near Platteville. John recalls washing clothes in the river and carrying pails of milk 500 yards in heavy snow from the barn.
He knows animal nutrition about as well as anybody in the world, I suppose, and has worked so closely with the cattle industry. A lot of people in academia don't spend a lot of time with their constituencies, but Dr. Matsushima has always done that.
John Matsushima was born of immigrant parents from southern Japan, and so he was always able to see America as a new land through their eyes. But the West was his territory from the start. He showed at county fairs. One year, his steer even beat a young rancher named Montfort, and he attended the National Western Stock Show every January.
And he became a role model for a lot of us, particularly us at the National Western, the mission of which is education.
For John, the West is a place of opportunity, but it also holds boundless questions. On their farm, he watched cattle eat green grass and produce red meat and rich protein, and it drew him to a deep interest in animal nutrition.
Johnny grew up with this hunger for knowledge.
John graduated valedictorian from Platteville High School and received a National Honor Society scholarship to Colorado A&M, now CSU. After a degree in animal husbandry, he went on to a PhD from the University of Minnesota and eventually a teaching position at Nebraska. But Warren Montfort begged John to return to his native Colorado.
Noted cattle feeder in Nebraska wanted to keep John at Nebraska and offered him a brand new Cadillac if he'd stay. John turned that down, and even though the salary was less at CSU, President Morgan assured him that the view of the mountains and the scenery here was worth $5,000 less.
John agreed with the bargain. He came back to Colorado in 1961 and stayed for good. His teaching and research have created landmark changes in the cattle industry, as well as generations of successful ranchers, cattle feeders, scientists, and dairymen.
His influence and impact goes well beyond the borders of this state. And I think also it could be said the same for the international influence that he has had.
At 92 years old, John shows no signs of slowing down either. He's no longer in the classroom, but he shows up almost every day at his office at CSU.
And he's never quit learning. It's just phenomenal what he does and how much he continues to give back to this industry.
John, a few years ago, asked me if I remembered what I got in his course. And I said, well, not necessarily do I remember exactly what I got. He pulled out the grade record from when I took it in the 60s.
Even today, he still calls a couple of times a year to get all of his data files updated.
I've never seen him without a big smile.
And John has been recognized countless times as a passionate educator and a groundbreaking animal research scientist. He received the Colorado State University Alumni Achievement Award and the Educators Award from the National Association of Meat Purveyors. It's the Emperor's citation from the Japanese government that he prizes so highly, an achievement usually reserved for presidents, prime ministers, and CEOs. John's international recognition extends around the globe from Europe to Asia. In Canada, he developed the first feedlots, and he also worked to improve the nutritional resources of Africa.
While he's accomplished many things in his life, he's a very humble person. John was a person that Warren could relate to. John was a person that W.D. Farr could relate to.
John's most far-reaching contribution came to him over a bowl of oatmeal at a cafe with Warren Montfort, Louis Dinklage, and Earl Brookover.
And it was a cold morning. We ordered hot cereal. And that came to my mind that maybe we feed some warm feed to cattle. We called it steam flaking. And on cold mornings, the cattle would just rush to the feed bunk and eat that grain.
The work that he did in the very beginning in developing a corn flaking process, I think as we look back another 50 years from now, we're going to see that that still remains maybe the top 3 things that revolutionized the cattle feeding industry in the United States.
It has a bigger impact on our industry today than it did 50 years ago because corn prices have gone from $2 a bushel to $8 a bushel.
In his life, he has suffered challenges and adversity.
In high school, John Matsushima was one of only 3 Japanese-American students in his small class of 71. But after Pearl Harbor, he gained an unwelcome notoriety.
The signs went up, no Japs, stay out. And so, naturally, we couldn't go buy groceries. And my friends, I had many good friends, classmates. On every Saturday, they went to the grocery stores, and after dark, they would bring the food in to our basement.
Well, any special project you're working on right now?
John overcame these obstacles, and today he says he sees only opportunity in adversity.
Get ready for another book.
John's family has grown to his 2 children, Bob and Nancy, and their extended families, including 4 grandchildren. But it was his wife, Dorothy, who always inspired him.
That whole family is a wonderful family. She was an important part of his life, an important part of the inspiration and what he was able to accomplish.
Despite John Matsushima's groundbreaking work in the cattle industry, his first passion has been teaching young people.
I talked to other fellow classmates that said, you know, you've got to take this course.
You know, #1 stand-up man, one of the most inspirational people that I've ever had the opportunity to meet. Yeah, we learned a lot about cattle nutrition, but we really learned more about the livestock industry, the people in the livestock industry, the culture, the heritage of the business, and being good stewards of the land.
In many ways, He and his family represent the American dream.
John Matsushima withstood a difficult beginning, racial prejudice, and the Great Depression. One friend says these hardships prove just how tough this true Westerner has always been, and is to this day.
If you can survive, you can go on and do great things. And he has. And so he is a true Coloradoan, a true citizen of the West. There couldn't be a better nominee, a greater honoree than we recognize in Dr. Matsushima.
Those in the industry have always said that he was just a farm kid from Platteville, Colorado that grew out to be a genius.